Hi, everybody.
Hey, everyone.
I'm David Bell.
I'm Tom Ryman.
We just watched The Cloverfield Paradox.
You sure did.
Whatever you're doing, stop.
Cloverfield Paradox
This movie
dropped like a secret Beyonce album.
Yes.
Last
with
night.
a Super Bowl ad.
Or I guess when this airs, it'll be 2 nights ago. Yeah, the Super Bowl.
And it made me very angry.
This movie on a personal level
made me angry after watching it. Tom, what was your experience?
It was just boring.
Yeah.
We
should probably say there's going to be spoilers.
Oh yeah. We'll label the show as well, but this show is going to be laden with spoilers.
Yeah.
Lousy with them.
Up the ass with
Overflowing with spoilers. It's very clearly a movie that was its own thing, much like 10 Cloverfield Lane. I think this movie was originally called God Particle. And at its core, it's just it's a boring version of Event Horizon. It's like a less good version of Event Horizon. Regardless of how you feel about Event Horizon, the Cloverfield Paradox is a less good version of it.
Yes.
It is the inferior interpretation.
It is a very badly written movie.
A spaceship going to another dimension and horror ensuing.
For me, it's the epitome of why J.J. Abrams to me is now a villain.
J.J. Abrams!
And why I hate the mystery box. Because for those of you unaware, at one of his TED Talks, maybe his only TED Talk, J.J. Abrams brought out a box with a fucking question mark on it.
It was a literal mystery box.
Yes, it was a literal mystery box that he bought at a magic store. And the idea is that the magic store was selling this box for a set amount of money. You could buy one of these boxes. Then the premise was you just didn't know what was in it. You pay a certain amount of money and you get what's in this box. And it's a mystery. Woo! And the New York Times later released an article saying that they tracked down the magic store, bought one of these mystery boxes, and found that it was filled with cheap crap.
It's them trying to move their shitty merchandise that nobody buys.
Exactly, which is a perfect analogy for what J.J. Abrams does, because these Cloverfield films, for all that, there's moments I like from them, there's moments I don't like, but they're purposefully confusing and obtuse to pretend to be complex and well written, quite like Lost, in my opinion, as well. Where it's the writers setting up a bunch of confusing storylines with no intent to answer them. And for some reason, it's tricking people into thinking that that's good writing. When in reality, that's the laziest, easiest writing you can do.
I don't think that necessarily applies to the writing of the Cloverfieldiverse, the Cloververse, so much as it's a marketing machine. Mm-hmm. That's all it is. And the entire marketing scheme is just... surprise, there's a movie and you don't know what it's about.
Right.
You kind of know basically what it's going to be about because...
and I've seen on
it's
Twitter
a Cloverfield movie. And
on Reddit people praising that marketing idea of like, no expectations, people can go in and judge it for themselves. The problem with that is that it's a direct-to-DVD movie.
It's a bad
Back
movie.
in the day, we would have direct-to-DVD movies, and they would also show up unannounced with no ads. Direct-to-DVD sequels, specifically. That's not a new thing. They just tried to present it as an exciting thing. Of like, this thing is coming to streaming all of a sudden with no anticipation. And that's not a good sign for a movie. It means that they didn't have the confidence in the movie to show it to critics, to try to advertise it.
Right, to try to get theaters to show it.
Yeah, and it's a January movie. It's a movie that they clearly were going to probably dump at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
Paramount didn't want, I assume, and they sold it to Netflix. And Netflix
Paramount usually distributes Bad Robot films, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I believe they just stuck it in a little hype machine, and they're going to make their money. I don't know. I don't know how
it's
Netflix...
impossible to tell how that...
Yeah. They're gonna say, oh, millions of people watched it. This many million, so it was a success. But the thing is, it's a free movie.
Yeah. Well,
that
for
was
most
hyped
people,
at the Super Bowl.
it's not free. You're paying a Netflix subscription, but most people watching the Super Bowl have access to a Netflix subscription.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, of course millions of people are going to watch it. It's a fucking Cloverfield movie that you can just sit down and watch whenever you want to. I paused it several times to go do other things.
I paused it several times to write down dialogue.
Yeah, it's pretty... Okay, we should get into what this movie's about.
Sure.
The movie...
Astronauts.
Yeah, sure. It's about astronauts on this space station who are trying to activate a particle accelerator that will just essentially it's a perpetual motion machine.
Yeah, it's free
basically.
energy.
It's just something that will just continue to generate energy at no loss in output.
Meanwhile, the world is falling apart for this very reason.
Yeah, they start the film by saying the world's going to run out of energy in 5 years. And that's what they say. They say energy. And they say it many times in the opening 5 minutes of this film. They don't say, what are we running out of? Fossil fuels? Was solar power not an option? They just say we're running out of energy.
Just no more energy.
No more energy.
Sorry, everybody.
Yeah. Energy's all out.
It's so weird. There's a lot. This is just the overall theme is it feels like a kid was telling this story.
Yeah.
And I want to mention that board game we were playing, the card game we played the other night, the Once Upon a Time, where it's each player has to lay down a new card, adding a new piece of story. And since it's everybody doing it, there's a lot of like, oh, and I didn't mention that the horse has a golden jewel on it, where you have to sort of like amend it as you go.
Yeah.
I will say this movie felt like that.
Oh, yeah.
It felt like it was being made by people improving a movie as they went.
Yeah, so
anyway.
They go up in the space station, they turn on the reactor, which they tell us they've been up when we get into the main action of the movie. They've been up in the station, this small team of astronauts, for over 2 years. And they've already run several unsuccessful tests of this machine. So we see them run another one, and it works for a minute and then craps out, and some weird anti-gravity thing happens where they all hit the ceiling and then come back down, and we later figure out it's because they've been flipped upside down.
And like most astronauts, they bicker like high school kids and blame each other for things.
This is the literal first scene we see is the Russian guy screaming at the German guy and accusing him of deliberately trying to sabotage the project.
It's always fun.
Because the world is in a situation of intense, escalating global conflict on the border of war. They don't tell us about at all until about halfway through the film.
Right.
We just think, like, this scene just tells us that the Russian guy specifically is mad at the German guy.
Yeah.
We don't learn the world's on the brink of war until much, much later.
Right away, that was exhausting to me because it felt like characters being illogically angry so that they could have conflict later.
Right, yeah.
Like, it was that feeling of like, oh, this is going to be a thing throughout the movie. These people are going to be yelling at each other.
But then it's not.
Yeah, no,
that never comes back.
You're right.
Other characters become illogically angry with the German guy.
Also, a lot of things get established that never come back, too.
So they turn on the machine, everything flips upside down, which I guess was a really sweaty way of saying their world's been turned upside down, because they slowly realize that they've been transported to another dimension, basically another multiverse reality of their own reality, where things are slightly different, where the space station has crashed.
We're getting ahead of ourselves.
Are we?
First, they watch a news clip. An interview with a guy with the sweatiest exposition.
Oh, this is before they turn it on.
Yeah.
Okay, before they turn on the machine, they watch what is very obviously a quick reshoot of Donald Logue.
The space station is called Cloverfield.
Right.
Yeah.
The space station is called the Cloverfield Space Station, which you only hear in...
what's clearly the reshoots.
Right, because if you notice, all of the space station's like computers and all of their uniforms say Helios on it.
Right, of course.
The station was called Helios.
You're right.
Until J.J. Abrams got his claw on it. And then it's called Cloverfield, but only on obviously 80-yard news segments. Yeah. And then, anyway.
So, I do want to talk about the name Cloverfield for a second.
Yes.
Because it's the street name from J.J. Abrams' office. So the first Cloverfield was from J.J. Abrams looking at his window and deciding, let's put the name Cloverfield on it. This is why he's the fucking modern George Lucas, in that he's lazy.
This is why he's the literal fucking worst.
And so they made it like this mystery box. What is Cloverfield? Why is it called Cloverfield? All these people, they didn't know when they made the first Cloverfield. They had no idea. It was the fucking street. Then the second 10 Cloverfield Lane, they added... Again, that's a movie that was a different movie that they reshot to add the word shoehorn in fucking Cloverfield, which is literally just a shot of the mailbox.
Yeah.
That, it's 10 Cloverfield Lane. Like, that's supposed to be smart and mean something. And then now we know that Cloverfield is not the name of the street. The street name was a coincidence that 10 Cloverfield Lane, it's the meaning of Cloverfield is it's this space station that will supposedly answer all of our questions about the last movies.
Right. So
once again shoehorned in.
Yeah, as they're about to turn the machine on, we see this news broadcast that's on for some reason in the control room where those astronauts just have the TV on in the background while they're about to turn on a particle accelerator that is so dangerous they have to be in space to test it.
There's so many little dumb moments.
So that zooms in on Donald Logue on television, and it's the only time you see him in the movie. Because they wanted to bring some legitimacy to these regions, so they got TV's Donald Logue. And he's this crackpot theorist who's babbling about the Cloverfield paradox, and he's saying that if they turn this machine on, it's going to shatter the boundaries between dimensions and realities, and literally loosen demons.
Yeah, he says it's going to create monsters, demons, sea monsters, like very oddly specific. He
specifically
theory.
says creatures from the sea. And so we're like, oh, like in the first Cloverfield.
Yeah, and that's how they do the exposition. That's how they decided.
Yeah.
Because they apparently needed us to know what this was going to do.
Yeah.
So they said,
to know how
have some guy on TV say it. And they must have asked the question, like, isn't that really stupid? And then they're like, well, just have a character note how stupid that is. Because they do that thing where...
Right, they have him say, did he say demons?
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, let's turn on our machine. Let's turn on our demon accelerator.
And it creates demons by pure fucking coincidence to this guy, the guy that they're interviewing on TV, he's not an expert. He has no inside information.
No, he just happens to have written a book called The Cloverfield Paradox.
That's some of the worst exposition I've seen in a movie in a long time.
It's also not a paradox, I don't think.
It's not a paradox.
Do they ever explain what the paradox
I think
would
the
be?
paradox is the idea that it will go back in time and add demons to our history.
Yeah,
which is
true.
why
That's true.
why they're explaining
it's how they're explaining the first two films and how they're all connected, even though they're not.
But it's a really dumb connection.
So,
as you probably guess, this is what happens.
Yeah. So they create an alternate world. They find their space station floating in an alternate version of their own reality. And in this reality, the space station exploded and crashed into the ocean. They were all killed.
Well,
yeah.
First, the Earth isn't there.
Yeah, first they see the Earth isn't there, and they find out...
Sorry, I want to go to this because it's another moment that I really liked.
Okay.
They saw the Earth isn't there because they're in the wrong part of the galaxy because it's an alternate upside down.
They're on the other end of the universe, at the other end of the galaxy.
Yeah, and they check all their spaceship sensors, and they can't detect the Earth. They're looking out, they can't detect the Earth. So our main character runs to her room and tries to Skype her boyfriend at her
husband.
And it doesn't work because of course it wouldn't. And that's the moment she's like, "Oh my god!" And it's just like you just saw the Earth wasn't there. Yeah. Like all your sensors,
you can't even there's nothing
There's some really bad beats in this movie,
right?
That,
yeah, they started out in the space station started out in the one in Gravity where it's they're right in front of the Earth. The Earth is huge right in front of them.
And then it's fucking.
She needed a failed Skype call to confirm that. So they are in this alternate world. In this alternate world, this space station exploded, and distraught over the loss of this last gasp effort to create renewable energy, the world has plunged into war,
which we don't find out about until
later.
Past the severed arm.
Yeah. Okay. So. The first...
Past the person on the wall. That was the first laugh out loud.
At first I thought this is cool. Okay, so the first oddity they notice is that they hear howling behind one of these panels.
Inhuman screaming.
Right, animalistic shrieks. So they tear this panel off the wall, and there is a woman inside who has been fused with the circuitry in the wall.
I want to back up because I really like the dialogue here.
Okay.
Because the dialogue, I have it written down somewhere. It's basically the Inhuman screaming, and it says I looked at it's on the captions on Netflix. It was something like that, like Inhuman wailing, and one person says like, "What is that?" And the other person says like, "Walls don't make noises like that." Like, and then the third person's like, "We should open the wall." And then let's get the tools. And then one like, "Isn't that dangerous?" And it's like, "We're doing this." And it's like the worst goddamn dialogue. And there's a few moments like this where there's a part after this where the writer clearly wanted to show that they were all bickering and heated. So it's a conversation of someone saying, "I think you're to blame," and the other person goes, "No, you're to blame," and then the other person's like, "Well, we're all to blame," and like it's such a rigid, like childish conversation where the writer was like, "I want to show them throwing blame," and so it's like have them yelling, "I blame you,"
have them literally shout the word blame at
and
each
the
other.
Dialogue is like this throughout the goddamn movie.
Okay, so they find a woman fused with the circuitry in the wall, which at first I was like, "Oh, that's pretty gnarly."
Yeah,
that's an interesting idea, and they cut her out of there. Even after Chris O'Dowd, who is in this movie, tells them not to cut those lines because they're power lines.
Right.
But they cut them anyway, and it doesn't seem to matter.
No, nothing matters.
And they carry her to the infirmary, and she wakes up and is like, knows everyone. She knows everyone in the crew except for Zihi Zhang. She doesn't know the Chinese woman. She knows everybody, and it turns out she is a member of the space station crew in the alternate reality that somehow wound up on their space station when they crossed dimensions. But she got fused into the wall when they crossed over. So like, oh, okay, that's...
Yeah, why not?
Sure, that's weird. But then it's... The most frustrating thing about this movie with me is that it couldn't decide whether it was a science fiction film about, like a Mirror Mirror type thing, where it's about an alternate universe, or if it was about haunting. Because it does both, and it doesn't explain why one is the case and the other wouldn't be.
It also doesn't understand what tone it is, if it's a comedy or if it's a horror.
There are a lot of weird comedic beats from Chris O'Dowd.
Yes, and those comedic beats did not make me laugh. What would make me laugh is the shift afterwards. Is Chris O'Dowd the guy who...
He's the Irish guy.
Yeah.
He loses his arm, yeah.
Like, I kind of get the idea that, like, okay, you open a weird portal, there's some sort of quantum physics weird bullshit happening, and so it appears to be like a haunting effect and stuff we don't understand. But there's no rules to it in this.
No, and there's literal hauntings.
It feels like the real antagonist is the screenwriter. Like, it feels like a group of people on the spaceship battling a screenwriter.
Really fighting the screenwriter.
Yeah, because there's things that happen like that point where they have to eject that piece of the ship.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why they have to do that. I still don't remember. They have to something to do with
percentage. It was throwing the rotation off. And
then
if it threw the rotation off enough, it would crack the thing.
And then, of course, there's the moment where the captain sacrifices himself.
Yeah.
He gets onto the part that needs to be ejected and says this has to be manually ejected. So I have to do it from inside the part. Yeah, from the part that has to be ejected.
Right.
The spaceship is designed in a way that the manual ejection is done from the...
has to be done from within the thing that's being ejected.
Yeah. It was such a bad attempt at being like Gravity or something where George Clooney... Right. Like, it was such a bad attempt at that.
Or Event Horizon when Lawrence Fishburne
someone sacrifices
blows the thing up.
And she says right before he does it, like, it could be done remotely. And he's like, no. You have to let me do this.
This is the only way.
He says it like I was literally waiting for him to say, they wrote me to do this. Like, I have to do it.
I have no choice.
It's in the screenplay.
Yeah. The illusion of free will was destroyed by these monstrous screenwriters.
And there's a lot of... and that's what I feel like there was a lot of moments like that where things would just sort of happen because they needed to happen.
Right. Okay, so here's something. They start out by making it seem like a haunting. You have a strange woman appear fused to the inside of the spaceship, and they cut her out, and she's claiming to know all of them, but is upset that they don't recognize her. They don't know who she is. And they show, like, a creepy picture of the crew changes to show her instead of Zihi Zhang. That's haunting.
Yeah.
Because
I mean, I never, to be
their
honest,
space station would still be from their universe. It wouldn't like.
To be honest, you mean like haunting, like
Event Horizon.
Yeah,
like the premise
that never occurred to me. Here's the reason it never occurred to me. Because they have a sweaty fucking exposition guy explain what I'm about to see at the beginning of the movie.
But he says demons.
I know. And I just figured that was because he was like demons and monsters, and then he had sea monsters, which I was like, you mean like in Cloverfield?
And
the very specific fucking sea monsters.
Why would you include demons and sea monsters in the same?
And so it just felt like, okay, well, this is going to be a multi-dimensional thing where...
Yeah, but like
I started giving up on trying to understand it because I knew the movie wasn't going to explain itself.
Right, you accepted that the movie wasn't good. But the other thing I wanted to get to was the Russian guy.
Yeah.
The Russian guy... They notice a critical piece, which is a smaller version of the warp drive from Event Horizon. It's just missing. A cube, and they discover that it's missing for some reason. This tiny lunchbox-sized gyroscope is the thing that gives them all of their navigational tools, and it's missing. And so, like, oh, that's weird. And then the Russian guy starts getting a headache, and then we see him later. Starts touching his head because it hurts, and then his eye turns around in his head, which is a cool effect. And then it pops back in, and then he starts talking to someone, but we only hear his side of the conversation. He's fucking haunted.
Yeah, I looked this up online, and someone was arguing that he merged with the other version of himself, and that's why. But they don't explain it, and that's
continue along this thread. That fine. Why is his eye fucked up?
Yeah.
Two things happen. He 3D prints a gun with the 3D printer that they're using to make their food. I'm not sure how that works.
Yeah, they shouldn't even have the design for a gun.
Right, it shouldn't even be in there, let alone have the plastics to make. Like, you have to swap out what you're printing
Exactly,
with.
And he prints it out in like 10 minutes, and it has like working, moving parts. And, but when they show it print out, they do it like on its side, and it's like just gun shape being printed out.
Yeah.
Like you can just print the gun out of the same one material.
The clip is also there. The magazine is also there.
Yeah.
It's printed in the same thing. I assume the bullets were printed within the magazine. It's very dumb.
I'm pretty sure. I bet the writer thought he was brilliant, and then someone was like, "That's dumb." And he was like, "Well, have a character say, why is there a gun now?" Which they have later. Like,
they do say,
like, why does someone have a gun? And it again feels like.
So, Russian guy, who apparently, this new information has just come to light, may have fused with his alternate dimension self, which nobody else did.
Yeah, I mean, let's say no, because that's just someone online doing the work for the writers.
Right. So he makes a gun, and he goes to hold up the German guy, who we know he hates because he had a scene earlier where he was angry at him for no reason. So now he's threatening to shoot that guy for reasons that are unclear.
Yeah.
And then he just starts throwing up on himself. So they take him to the infirmary, where he just vomits an explosion of worms.
Which I think they were just trying to do Alien.
They established earlier. They had a little terrarium full of worms. Yeah. Again, not clear why they have a terrarium full of worms. Mm-hmm. There's probably some hydroponic reason for them or something. I'm not sure. But there's just a terrarium full of worms. Then suddenly they're gone. And Chris O'Dowd makes a big thing of it just to make sure that we notice it. Yeah. Just like they make a big thing of his magnetic putty.
Right. Yeah, they keep showing it, and it was like, oh, that's going to be a thing.
That's going to be a thing. They really Chekhov's gun those worms and that magnetic putty. So then the Russian guy vomits up the worms. That's a haunting.
Yeah.
Why were the worms inside? And then the worms...
I assume...
The worms are like... Zihi Zhang starts stomping on the worms and then lifts up her foot like, ew, because the worms are full of like gore and blood. Like they're hell worms.
I thought
this is a haunting.
That was the thing, is I thought maybe the idea was that when they went to the other dimension, certain objects like shifted
collided,
into people.
Maybe.
But if that's true, that guy should have instantly been like, there's something very wrong with me.
Or
I'm
dead.
Filled with worms.
Because here's the other thing that happens.
It's bad.
Is they have Chris O'Dowd's working on part of the ship, and then his arm just suddenly gets sucked into the wall.
Yep.
And they come to his rescue. The captain, who played I forget his name. He's the guy who played Martin Luther King in Selma.
Sure.
He comes up to pull him out, and they pull him out of the wall, and his arm's just gone. Like, it's just not there.
They say it was like he never had it.
Right.
But it's severed.
So
that is not like
severed.
If it was like he never had it, if it was like he's born that way, it would have been a stump.
Another hilarious turn is that they made his stump look like a cartoon slice of meat where you can see the bone in the center, and then it's like it's clearly been severed, and they're like, it's like the doctor says it was like he was born without it.
And this is one of those moments where I couldn't tell if they're trying to be funny because the tone didn't work. Is the guy who loses his arm is like he's the
comic relief.
The comic relief, but none of his lines seem appropriate, and like they don't. So much happens that they don't give the characters, like he loses his arm and then he's like cracking jokes immediately.
Right, he's immediately joking about losing his arm.
When he goes like, "Hey, where are the worms?" and then that guy spits out the worms. He's like, "Guess we found the worms," and it's just like, your colleague just exploded.
This is
worms.
Friend.
Yeah.
He later said, I'm sorry, he was my friend.
Why are you cracking a joke? And it's because they just needed to cram it all in there. And this moment, he loses the arm and the doctor's looking at it and he says, like, I don't know the rules anymore. You think it might grow back? Which he says genuinely.
Right, he's an engineer on a space station. He has to be a fucking genius.
And I thought
he just asked if his arm would grow back.
And I thought that would be that funny beat of everybody looking at him like, he's serious? But then the doctor rubs his eyes and the music's serious and he says, I don't know. I don't know about anything anymore. And leaves. And it's like, wait. So maybe? Like,
so perhaps?
What? Like, and they play it like a serious fucking moment of them like, I don't know if your arm will grow back.
Then they find his arm.
Yes, then they
find his arm crawling down the hall, and they trap it in a box. And then it starts doing the spirit writing thing. It starts doing the don't say a word. The one
I was thinking thing in Addams Family.
I mean, that's a thing, but like, you remember that? Oh shit! It was that. I think is it a Michael Douglas or a Morgan Freeman one? It's the one that had Brittany Murphy in it.
Don't say a word.
Don't say a word. Where she's like doing the thing.
Never tell.
Yeah, she's doing a thing in the air, and it turns out that she's writing numbers.
Or Indiana Jones in the Crystal Skull.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
So they put a pen in its hand, and it writes out, "Open up, Volkov," who's the Russian guy. So his arm, that's his arm from this dimension.
But
is severed,
he can't control it. They asked him, like, are you controlling it? And he's like, no, I'm giving you the finger right now. Yeah. Again, he should be saying, oh my God, what is happening?
Right.
Why am I? This is a terrible time to be making any weird jokes.
Yeah. So his arm from this dimension somehow has consciousness, tells them to look inside the Russian guy. This is a haunting.
Right.
So they cut open the Russian guy. Oh, lo and behold, the gyroscope's inside him.
Yep.
Haunting.
Now, if you're wondering why that happens, they never
explain that.
It happens because the screenwriter needed them. I don't know. Here's the thing. I was going to say needed them to find the gyroscope thing.
But all that does is tell them that they're on the other side of the galaxy and that Earth is all the way over there. So that's the only piece of information they learn from all this.
Yeah. So it seems like the screenwriter just needed to stretch for time because there's no reason for any of that. None of that matters. None of it comes back.
No.
People online seem to praise this stuff as being like, oh man, that blew my mind. I don't know. Like, I've been looking at online reviews because I need to know, and this is because of the immediate hype of all the fans seeing it. This movie has a 16% critical score on Rotten Tomatoes. It has a 60% fan review. People who immediately saw it, which I assume are Cloverfield fans,
yeah, that's the people who would watch it.
Appear to be some of the dumbest people. I hate that. I don't want to insult anybody like this, but my God.
Yeah.
And the people, there's people talking about how like mind blowing this moment was, but they don't explain it, so it's meaningless. Anybody can do this. Anybody can write, and then the severed arm comes alive and says, "Look inside this man," and then they find it inside that man. But if they don't explain why any of that exists, it doesn't. It's gibberish. It's.
Again,
not good.
I would accept that shit
very bad.
As it was happening if this was a haunting.
Yeah.
But then, from that point on, after they recover the gyroscope from inside the Russian guy, they very clearly and very emphatically say that they've crossed into a multiverse dimension. Mm-hmm. It's just they've crossed into another version of their reality.
And they say
it's just an alternate reality.
Yeah. So none of this stuff...
None of this fucking haunted house...
Yeah.
boogaloo shit should be happening.
I assumed it was because like they opened some portal that was unstable and like possessing them. I don't know. That's the
why
problem.
does the wall eat his arm?
Yeah.
And
why
then
does any of that stuff happen?
Later on, when Daniel Bruhl, who's the German guy, and Ziyi Zhang are working on the a reactor again, she's like, "Oh, I need to run down to this place, do some fucking shit," and she runs into an airlock for some reason.
Right. That floods.
That floods with water again for some reason, because.
And that opens the airlock again for some reason.
Well, they show the door panel and it's normal, and then it's like a glitch, like goes in the machine, and then it turns to like bad.
Right.
That's a haunting.
Yeah, if this was a haunting movie, you're right. That would all make sense. It'd be
but it's
some
not.
spirit or entity or demon, something, and that's again, it's the screenwriter.
It's specifically not a haunting.
Yeah, they're being haunted by the screenwriter. That's it. Because there's no scientific. Because if it is a scientific thing, if it's like a multiverse glitch in our tear in the fabric of space-time, then there needs to be some explanation for why these things are happening. Because like the arm, I could see if it's like an arm being controlled by someone else in another universe or something. But
right.
But that doesn't make sense because the arm seems aware of what universe it is and it's crawling around.
And it somehow knew that the thing was inside the Russian guy.
And it knows it needs to write because they're watching it.
Like, why does it know this?
It doesn't make sense. Like it's a possessed entity. But if that's the case, you could say like, well, maybe it switched consciousness with somebody. But again, none of it's explained. And if someone's listening to this being like, well, they just didn't get it, you're doing the screenwriter's work for them by doing the mental gymnastics required to make this make sense.
These dots.
Because I guarantee you what happened was the screenwriter has no fucking clue why they're doing this stuff. And they just did it because it was neat. Like,
wouldn't it be cool if this happened?
Yeah, and if people have interpreted it in some way, it's not because they figured out the grand puzzle that is this movie. We haven't even talked about the B story.
There's a lot of stuff I want to talk about.
Yeah.
And so you're talking about her husband down on Earth.
Yes, which does not need to exist.
I was convinced for a minute that was a reshoot.
I think it was.
I don't know if it is or not.
Well, it doesn't go anywhere. Her husband, it works at a hospital.
Yeah. And
drives to the hospital. And meanwhile...
he's a doctor.
He's a doctor.
Yeah.
And there's the kaiju that are showing up.
But they don't specifically say until the end that it's a kaiju.
Well, no, there's the part where the hospital's blown up and there's a shadow over it. It's clearly...
Oh, I missed that.
Oh, okay. You don't see it, but it's clear like there's something in there. But it's... This plot is him basically going to the hospital, finding it blown up, finding a little girl in the rubble, which was shocking in two ways. One, that she's just standing there and seems completely unharmed.
Screaming her head off.
Yeah. And he does not react. He just
stands there staring at this little girl, screaming her head off.
He doesn't run to her.
And then, like, we see them later where he's got her in his car and he's driving around trying to find a safe place to go. And she's like, my uncle's dead.
Yeah.
And we're like...
Okay.
What? Like, we don't... And they never explain what her circumstance was. We only see, like, he texts somebody and it's like... Can I use your shelter? It was like, hey...
I think it was supposed to sort of connect to Cloverfield Lane, I think.
Because I thought that. I was like, oh, are they trying to connect this to John Goodman's character?
Alternate universe John Goodman.
But it's not because the name is different.
Oh, okay.
Like the guy he's texting is, I forget, Peter or something. So I was like,
then,
I wonder if it was the same. And I looked it up. I was like, no, John Goodman's name is fucking Howard.
This was a baffling B story.
And it's not the same shelter when they get there. It's a different shelter. Right.
And meanwhile, he's doing like a bit about his cell phone with the girl who's apparently not at all traumatized.
Yeah, she's just sitting there and like, you shouldn't text while you drive.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, okay, that's fine. Nothing. These characters don't matter. They are not real people.
And then he records a message for his wife, who's our main character on the space station.
Yeah, and he finds the girl's parents via text.
And
that's the end of that story.
Somebody else finds the girl's parents via text, and then texts him, it's like, we found her parents. And like, great.
And that's it.
We're just sitting in the shelter now.
Did that girl exist in the movie?
I don't know.
Why did any of that exist?
I think they wanted something to keep cutting away to, again, to fill time.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of filler in this movie where they were like, we need to go... Like, it feels like someone shot a movie or they wrote a movie and then they needed to chop it into pieces.
Make it about 30 minutes longer than it is.
Yeah. And they needed to, like, move shit around.
Yeah.
Because it was clearly reshoots with the gun, which we haven't even mentioned the story of the gun.
Yeah, the gun is the gun is a whole opera on its own.
Because the gun is brought out for that scene you mentioned.
Yeah, the Russian guy 3D prints the gun, then immediately throws up on himself and dies. So they take the gun and they lock it in a locker. And then later in the film, the woman from another reality, who was their friend and colleague in another reality, betrays them because she wants to steal all of the German scientists' notes and take it back to her Earth,
right?
So that they can have a shot at rebuilding another space station and generating energy and saving the world. So she murders one member of the crew. She breaks. She goes and breaks the gun out of the locker. Yeah. And tell us what the problem is with that.
This was what really. And this made me laugh out loud. She doesn't see them. She doesn't know the gun exists. They find her in the wall, and I mean, I believe this is what happens. They find her in the wall. She goes into the infirmary. She's kept in there. The guy goes crazy, uses the gun. They subdue him. He throws up on himself, and then they lock the gun away. And then later in this film, this woman, the gun is never mentioned or brought out ever again.
No.
And then this woman, it's time for her to turn on them. She just goes to the safe and takes the gun, like she knows it's there. As if she's read the screenplay.
Right. This character is unconscious in a different room. When the gun is brought out.
And again, she needed the gun because the screenwriter needed her to have the gun.
Yeah. The only reason she would know about the gun is if she'd been watching the movie.
Yeah.
She breaks into the locker, takes the gun, murders a crew member.
Yeah.
And then that's...
and she keeps trying to appeal to the main actress. This is what I meant about, this is the thing where it's like it felt like it was written with that game. Like, halfway through the movie, only when it matters, because this woman promises our main character that in this universe, her family is still alive.
Right.
Which is how we learn her family died.
Right.
They never establish it, and then, like, 2/3 of the movie in, she's like, you could get your family back. And I'm just like, wait, her family's gone? Yeah. And, like, they never...
Her two children burned to death.
Yeah. All I can think is, like, when you write a script, you can go back and add stuff in. Like, you can edit. You can revise it.
Yeah.
Because it was, like, a last-minute thing. And, man, is it dumb. Because the idea is it
gives her a conflict to be like, oh, I should go back to this Earth because my children are still alive in this dimension.
And, again, they tried to pile in some sort of emotional connection that just wasn't there. She gave her... family power core that set on fire and killed her kids.
Yeah, it was like stealing energy or something.
Yeah.
Again, and then they only ever call it energy.
Yes. Yeah, she gives them an energy ball or something.
Energy cube. That's stealing energy from the Energy Corporation. Yeah. Siphoning energy from the energy farm.
And her, like, quick thing is she wants to go back to this alternate dimension to see her kids, even though she also exists there. And she's like, no, I have to warn her that she's going to also do this. And it's like, they're in World War III. Like, this world is ending, and you want to go back to make sure... She's like, because I know my person here is going to do the same mistake. And it's like, I'm pretty sure your version here is dealing with World War III. Is
worried about global cataclysm and war. And
like, it's so bad. And then... she decides at the last minute not to do that. Instead, just records a message to herself, which she apparently could just do the whole time.
Could have done it any time.
Yeah. Saying, hey, don't... trust me, it's me. Don't put the power core in.
Trust me, it's you.
Now I'm imagining, like, her other self in, like, a Terminator bunker, like, with fire everywhere, getting that message of, like, what the fuck? Like, the power core? It's just...
Yeah, no, my children died in a nuclear blast 3 weeks ago. I don't know what you're babbling about a power core for.
Oh, what a bad movie.
And then the ending...
So we got to...
The ending is everybody's dead.
Oh, yeah. Everybody's dead.
Oh, yeah, there's another weird thing that happens. Another haunting that happens.
Okay, yeah.
Is, we talked about the one where Z-Zang goes into an airlock and it clearly ghosts in the machine. It's not like a malfunction because the ship hasn't been malfunctioning at this point. They just show the control panel fine, and then there's like a and then it becomes danger and it fills up with water. The airlock breaches and she just freezes into a big chunk of ice, which is hilarious.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm glad you found it funny as well.
Then when Chris O'Dowd dies, he gets killed by his magnetic putty he's been using the entire movie, and it's because he goes into this room to turn off the O2 scrubber so they have the extra energy they need to run the reactor again, and all of a sudden, one side of the room becomes a giant magnet.
Only really sucking tools, because like there's like metal pipes and stuff that aren't really...
The wall itself...
They never explain this.
No, they don't. And then it pulls the putty out of the wall,
Yeah.
which turns into tendrils that grab him and then pull him back into the other wall.
Which, again, makes no sense.
Is a haunting.
Yeah. Also, I love this
and
moment
then it
because...
explodes.
Yeah. But I love this moment because there's also that, again, like a directing / screenwriting moment where the wall turns into a magnet.
Yeah.
He walks up to investigate, so the putty starts creeping at him. They clearly needed the actor to do something until the putty gets him, and that thing was just keep staring at this wall. He just keeps
staring at the magnet
Yeah, because they
wall.
clearly didn't have something for him, and they didn't need to write him past this moment, so they were like, just make him seem mesmerized with the wall.
He's dazzled by magnets.
We won't have to explain it because he's about to get murdered.
It's that ICP song.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, fuck this movie. Shit,
And then they turn the thing back on.
Well, hold on. The lady from the alternate dimension goes crazy.
Yeah.
Takes the gun. She shoots the German guy, too. Twice. And then she gets sucked out an airlock like an Alien Resurrection.
It's pretty great.
And it takes way too long for a human to get sucked out, but whatever. What was the moment? There was some moment during that battle which made me laugh hilariously. Oh, here's what it is. That woman kept queuing up video of the woman's family being alive in the alternate dimension. Where was she getting that video from? She showed up in the wall.
Yeah, it's on
her wrist.
It's like an Apple Watch.
Okay, I'll accept
she's queuing
that.
it up to
I'll
that.
accept that.
And they were messages that
she
had recorded for her.
Yeah, okay.
Because she was in the alternate dimension. She's friends with our main character, who's named Hamilton in the movie.
Right.
She's friends with Hamilton. And so Hamilton was just recording messages with her husband and children to send to her up on the space station because they were friends. So she kept queuing up, being like, "Look, don't try to stop me. You can stay here too and go to your family."
Instead, she smashes her through the video of her family.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
And then she gets out of the room before the air escapes. And then this was the part: is she's running to go back to the alternate dimension to turn on the machine.
Yeah.
And they intercut that with her patching up the doctor.
Yeah,
because they clearly couldn't figure out when that would actually happen.
Right.
So they just intercut it with her like running desperately to go turn it on. So did she run and like go carefully patch up the doctor, or is that supposed to be like a flash forward to later? Like it's clearly an event they knew they needed to happen. That not the doctor, the German
guy,
yeah, they needed the German to live, but they didn't exactly know how to.
Right, they wrote the movie so that Daniel Bruhl's character is vital. Like he's the only person who knows how to operate the machine.
Yeah. So they clearly, like in post, just didn't know where to put that information, and so they cram it in there. That's what I mean. This movie's bad quality in every sense. Like it looks really nice, but the editing, the writing, the directing, like all the back end stuff is very bad.
I remember, and I texted this to you while I was watching it, but during the opening credits, it like pops up. It's like costume designer Colleen Atwood. I was like, 4-time Academy Award winner Colleen Atwood was involved.
Way too good for this movie. Yeah, they had a great set.
She made all the spacesuits that say Helios on them, and not Cloverfield.
The spaceship looked great.
Yeah,
too.
The
CGI, the exterior. Yeah. The sets looked great. It was just a shame they couldn't fill it with a good movie.
It was a decent cast. Yeah. It was just like, what the fuck is this? Like, it couldn't. The main hang-up for me, if that wasn't clear, is that it couldn't decide what the game was. It couldn't decide whether it wanted to be haunting in space or if it wanted to be mirror.
I think it started,
and so it did both, and it doesn't work.
I think it's a movie that started where a writer had a lot of cool ideas for scenes and then wrote around those scenes to try to make them make sense. And then somebody came along and said, let's make this a Cloverfield.
Yeah.
And then made it even worse.
All of the scenes that aren't... We talked about how it seems like they invented the B story for Hamilton's husband.
Yeah.
Just so they had something to cut to. Because pretty much all that happens when we're on the space station is people running to other areas of the space station.
Yeah. Again, it's
somebody seeing something weird, going on the radio being like, guys! And they all come running to the other part of the station to see whatever freaky thing is.
I've heard it compared to Alien, and I that really angers me.
Get the fuck out of my face.
Exactly, because it's like, no, Alien had a villain.
Yeah.
This, it's just like, and then this happens,
right.
And then this happens, and then this part blows up, and then they have to run over here, and then they have to do this,
right.
And none of it's connected. There's no villain connecting anything.
And then this person is mad and has a gun,
and then this person has a gun, and we should probably get to the ending, which is they get to their dimension.
They turn the thing back on. Wrongly. They deliberately turn it on so that it breaks again, so that it will transport them back to their dimension, and then they turn it on correctly so that it will theoretically create energy for them.
They get to their dimension, and the space, like the ground control is like, holy shit, where have you been? And they're like, it's a long story. And then they go, well, what about whatever the energy thing is called? And they turn it back on. Like, they just got back from another dimension that they got to because they turned a machine on.
Yeah.
And all hell broke loose, and without another thought, they turn it back on at the end because that's a good idea.
Do.
Yeah, that's a real safe idea. And then they leave the station with it just running. Like, yeah, there's been no problems. Like,
well, they tell them to send it. They tell them to send a repair team up.
Yeah, but
they should tell.
They should say, we're shutting this down. There's something very wrong here.
Yeah.
And instead, they're like, well, we'll turn it on again. Oh, we got free energy. And it's like, it's supposed to be happy.
How is the energy going to get from... Because, again, it's just energy.
Yeah.
How is it going to get from... Excuse me. How's it going to get from the space station down to Earth?
I don't know.
Are they going to plug it in?
Yeah, I guess. Or they're going to... I don't...
Because they just leave it up there. Anyway, so they're plummeting back down to Earth, and then we cut back to Hamilton's husband in the bomb shelter with anonymous child who is pointless. Just gives him something to do. But they found her parents, thank God. We never see any of this. It's just over texts that he reads.
Yeah, that's thrilling text.
He gets a phone call from someone.
Who we never established who gives him every
gives
bit of
him
information.
all of this classified, presumably classified information. Hey, we just got back in touch with the space station. We told him to come back, and he starts freaking out. He's like, you told him to come back with these things out here? You should have told him to stay up there. And then they cut to a shot of their escape pod falling back down to Earth through the clouds, and then gigantic Cloverfield monster goes up and it's like, hey!
Yeah.
And then it ends.
And that's all.
And that's it.
Yeah, and that's
all we get.
And it was so, again, so pandering.
60%.
Because that's going to get people's... It's going to get people's dicks so hard. There's going to be a fan base where they're going to watch, because they're already a fourth one planning, they're going to watch and keep getting duped by this shit. Just to get these little teases of a CGI monster.
They showed...
Because it's literally like dangling keys in front of a kid. It's like, oh, look, there's a monster. And I've already heard people defending this movie of like, no, look, you just got to shut your brain off. I don't get why people are so mad at this. It's just a dumb monster film. To that I reply, there is no monster. There's no monster.
No, there's no monster.
There's just a monster at the end.
It is entirely...
It is a dumb movie.
Yeah.
And there's no... Like, I don't mind a dumb movie. It just has to have a reason to exist. Like, something has to happen in the movie.
My problem... The one thing... The main thing that I get hung up on in movies that I can't look past, regardless of whether it's supposed to be, like, an intricately plotted and acted drama or, like, just a goofy popcorn movie, is it has to follow its own fucking rules.
Yeah.
And this movie goes all over the place.
It has to have a reason to exist. It feels like it's just a marketing stunt that's going to work. It's just a really bad movie that they knew they had. They knew it was bad.
Couldn't decide whether it wanted to be a haunting or Mirror Mirror.
So they fucking made it a Cloverfield, and now they're going to rake in enough fucking hype that people are going to see it, and they're going to continue to make these movies. These fucking mystery box movies. These movies are the equivalent of clickbait in my head. Like they're clickbait movies.
Yeah, pretty much.
And I'm really disappointed in the people who like this movie.
Yeah, well.
That's like this is what I'm saying. This movie made me very angry because after I watched it, I immediately looked and saw the Rotten Tomatoes score and looked online. And I'm just so bummed
just sat
that
there,
this works.
Sat there silently
for
several minutes trying to collect my thoughts.
This is like a bad carnival attraction where you look in the mystery box and you touch a fucking chicken or something.
It's a haunted house It's a carnival haunted house, and this is an actual true life haunted house that I went on, where there were 2 scares. A guy in a costume at the very beginning, and the same guy at the very end. The rest of it was just a dark tunnel with weird music, with spooky music.
And that was
playing.
there so that guy could have a cigarette between the 2 scares.
The only employee, I don't know if it was, I don't know if it's just the only guy they had. I mean, it's not his fault. He did his part.
I would argue that this movie had
but
less scares than what you're describing.
Right, but that's what it feels like to me. It's the equivalent of a state fair haunted house that they could only hire one person to run.
I'm going to tell people, don't see this movie. See this movie the same way you'd consider seeing a straight-to-DVD sequel of a movie.
Right.
Where it's a bad movie.
Approach this the way you would approach Anaconda's Hunt for the Blood Orchid.
Exactly.
Or
in
whatever.
that, don't approach it unless you like crappy,
right.
fucking shitty sequels. That's it. It's it made me laugh a few times because of how bad it was.
The part that I do want to touch on this before we leave. This reminded me of a scene in Paranormal Activity, which is another series that gets hyped to the moon.
Yeah.
That is a trash fire.
Yeah.
In the very first Paranormal Activity, they set up the camera to watch the Ouija board. And they walk away, and the Ouija board starts like moving on its own, and then like some fire comes up.
Yeah,
I laughed my fucking balls off at that part.
Yeah,
I was like, seriously? Like,
yeah,
like moving. It's like a little Ouija board moving on its own, and there was some fire. I was like, that's okay. In this movie, there is a foosball table. They show the foosball table after the dimensions have collided. Again, this is another tick mark on the haunting list. Is they show the foosball table, and then all the foosball players start spinning incredibly fast. They just start spinning maniacally, and then it stops. And then there's like a pullback shot of the room, just quiet and still now. And they're like, wasn't that terrifying? I'm like, I am laughing. A foosball table
also
is
never
possessed.
Explains it.
No, they never explain it.
Again,
that's something that would be explained by a haunting. Yep. But not by this alternate universe thing, which is what they stick with. That's the horse that they ride to the finish line.
That's probably what this movie was, right? Like, they wrote a ghost haunting movie in space or something. Like, it was probably explained in the original script. And then they took out all the explanation. They left the cool parts. And then they added the Cloverfield
I don't even know if that much is true.
Yeah, I don't know. This movie's a fucking mess.
It's a garbage.
It shouldn't be
a garbage barge.
Yeah,
it's a trash barge.
It didn't deserve a Super Bowl trailer. It doesn't deserve the quality of the people making it, like the effects and the
it's a good looking film, and it's
all the technical jobs are great. Except I would say the editor. Well, the editor's probably fine. He just again had a shitty film.
What do they have to work with?
Yeah, it's just a waste.
It's a very bad film. Yeah. Waste of everything. Every person and resource involved in this film.
Yeah.
Huge waste. Just so we could see a close-up of a space station console with a little Slusho figurine on it.
Right.
J.J. Abrams being like, hey, it's all connected. No, it's fucking not.
No, it's not. J.J. Abrams, you are a villain. If you're listening to this, you need to stop.
Yeah, just stop now.
Stop this shit.
Stop it.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
I think that was a rousing success.
Yeah. I guess that's it. Thanks for listening. We'll be doing this every week unless we die.
Right. Yeah. Right up until the Cloverfield Paradox happens in our world, and then sea creatures and demons. Maybe sea demons.
I think the 4th movie is going to be the stupid demons.
I was promised demons.
Yeah.
Now I want demons.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Alright, are we done?
Just let it end. Let it end. Heavy sigh is how this needs to end.